Disclaimer: the hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 97 of Above Ground Podcast. Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below. That's right. We are inching ever closer to the century mark. Yeah, it's going to be cool to be a century's boy, you know what I mean? So, not sure what we're doing yet, but hey, the work continues. But first, I just want to get a big, huge shout out to our worldwide friends around the globe that listen to the podcast every week on all the other channels that we're on. And all the big ones know who they are. They don't really need any more publicity than they get already because they do get a lot. So, but that's great. We did just receive a brand new donation. Thank you from the Netherlands. Thank you. And it's awesome. We have people that listen to us in the Netherlands and New Zealand and in the UK. Don't forget, last week we had Hannah Stainer on from the UK, the Psyche Mental Wellbeing Podcast. She is awesome, and you got to check her out. I was on her podcast, actually, which also dropped on the same day, so you can check that out. But the reason why I gave a shout out to my worldwide friends first is because I need to make I have a special announcement to make this week. It's very cool because Tim and I are both lifelong residents of the 518 of New York State. Tim and I are also both part of the 518 music scene. We have been for many years. TPP was the drummer in the hardcore band Section 8. Yes, that TPP. Yes, that's Section 8. And I was the frontman in a band called the Freak Nation. And actually, believe it or not, we were out around the same times. Me a little bit earlier than him, and him later than me in bands. And we've been part of the music scene in the 518 for a long time. And we've recently been given an opportunity. And I'm so grateful to say that Above Ground Podcast is now being streamed in the 518 from nippertown.com. And if you're from the 518, nippertown.com is the internet's version of the preview of the Times Union, a Metroland, an experience, and all of it kind of wrapped into one bubble online. It's art, entertainment, culture, and now we are under their wellness section. And I want to thank Jim Gilbert and Ralph Renna for making that happen. And it kind of all happened so fast. And, when they say that things just kind of happen when they're supposed to happen, that's kind of how this happened. And Jim is a lifelong music aficionado, photographer, fan, just workhorse for it. And of course, everybody knows Ralph, and I grew up with Ralph, and Ralph's a good guy, man. And South Troy against the world. Some people will understand that. But so now Above Ground Podcast can be streamed anytime you want on nippertown.com. Thank you, Jim Gilbert. Thank you, Ralph Renna. And thank you, 518. We'll be at some events, I'm hoping, this summer, maybe, as we start to open up things. We do a lot in the 518 as far as mental health awareness goes. I am part of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Capital Region chapter, and I'm also a NAMI member. And we have some stuff that we do at some of these events and things. So you'll be hearing from more 518 people also that have not-for-profits and do events and stuff too, because as much as I want to get out to anybody who will listen, because if we can help one person with a tool or just a voice out there to say you're not alone and feeling the way you are, we're good. But if we can help, if we can think globally and act locally, then we're doing our job. So thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to being on nippertown.com now. And thank you, Jim Gilbert, for making that work, man. And you can stream all the episodes, so please do. And don't forget, you can buy T-shirts at closeknitco.com. And you can buy our Be Well, Be Safe, Be Above T-shirt or our hoodie. That supports the show, and you can also make a donation on PayPal. Episode 97 coming at you right now. Shadow Days. Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to
Above Ground Podcast.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
What's up, everyone? We hope you're doing well out there in podcast land. Timmy and I are back in the Hallam Halls, man. It's sweet to be here.
It's sweet.
I get my coffee cup back that I've been searching for, even though I knew it was here. I just couldn't remember that it was here, and, that's me. But I can't remember a lot of things because sometimes
You forget.
you forget. And did you know that you could be wrong and swear you're right?
I did know that. Did you?
I did. And you know what? People can prove you're wrong, and you can still swear you're right.
Yes. Yes.
We're talking about shadow days.
I had a rough start. Some tough times. How about you?
Yeah, me too. But I'm a good man with a good heart,
That's
just
true.
like you.
That's true.
Yeah, we're talking shadow days, man. Thanks, John Mayer, for that, because that song is killer. That's the inspiration for this
That's
week's
the
episode.
inspiration, yeah. Kind of. For me, it was kind of like, leaving your shadow days behind and moving forward.
I don't ever think that your shadow days leave. Because, again, your shadow is always behind you or in front of you, depending on where the sun is.
Okay, you can leave it behind, I guess you should say. I should have said then. Like, I'm trying to face forward and not look back at the shadow.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I think it's better to stay forward and leave your shadow at your back. But I also think you have to acknowledge your shadow.
Yeah, absolutely do.
And I think that's a big part of recovery, of moving on, of just being able to reframe your mind.
Recovery. No, you're right. Absolutely. I think that was well said. Because you can't really move forward without, some healing.
No, absolutely not. And like when you look at these lyrics and I've actually watched several videos of John Mayer play the song in different renditions and stuff, and it's amazing that if you looked at him from the outside, you'd be like, really? This really you? Or are you writing this about somebody else? But it goes to show, man, it doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you do. It's there. It's always there. The shadow is always there, and the shadow of regret, and the shadow of not living up to your own hype and not living up to your own expectations. And on the verge of a birthday for me coming up, I always use my birthday to reflect on where I've been. And I sometimes get stuck in that where I've been as opposed to where I'm going part. See that, and it's very easy to focus on where you've been and realize that you didn't hit the marks that you wanted to hit.
Right. I think you have to, definitely identify and acknowledge where you've been, and it's necessary to acknowledge it so you can heal those aspects, but after that process, then just keep moving forward.
But here's a question, though. How do you know when you're healed? Like, how do you really know? Like, is there a gauge? I mean
I think everybody's different. And like for me, I would say if I know certain situations that can either trigger me or, my reaction to them will be, X, Y, Z. Now, if I am working, on this trail to higher self, so to speak, if one of those situations should arise and I catch myself and I kind of, even it out, then I go, wow, okay.
You've seen some growth? Is that what
growth? That would be the perfect word. Yes, I have. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I haven't really grown a day since I was like, probably 17 or 18. I'm still 5'3".
It's all right, Willow.
Yeah, well,
But no, you I'm sure you've seen growth even in yourself, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether I want to acknowledge it or not, and
that's another episode,
right?
That's a whole other episode or two.
That's a different thing. Of whether you want to acknowledge that you've grown. I mean, there's no doubt that I've grown leaps and bounds. I mean, compared to
right,
compared to,
I've seen
compared
it,
to
sure.
compared to where we started.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing with you.
Mm-hmm. But
again,
this takes time, and I know it does. And I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million more. When you've ran that same record in the limbic jukebox for 30 plus years, it's hard to, those grooves are in there.
Dude, they're so well worn that
right.
You could find them in the dark with no feeling whatsoever.
Right.
You could just like seep right into
there. You have to have the night vision goggles, the flashlights, everything. You have to be prepared because you have to stay focused and disciplined and aware,
She puts the lotion in the basket.
Did I say lotion? What are you talking about?
You said night vision goggles. It's the only thing I could ever think of.
Now I know, yes.
It's the only thing I could ever think of, man, is that...
Thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to have nightmares. Talking about leaving the past behind, I'm going to leave that behind.
Ah, what a great movie.
But like what you were saying, you have to kind of... I don't remember the word you used, but just acknowledge your past. Like you can't, if you were writing a book, you can't really, focus on chapter 3 when you're stuck on chapter 2. If you're thinking about chapter 2, worrying about what you did, was it wrong? I could do better. All those gremlins when they start talking. The slew of passages that you're going to be whispered to, so you can't get stuck on that and then expect to go, okay, well, I'm gonna try chapter 3 now. You have to kind of take care of it. Like you can move forward on chapter 3, but like if chapter 2's still haunting you, at some point you're gonna have to revisit it.
Absolutely. I just wonder, like, how do you figure out whether you ignore it? Or do you actually face it, or is avoidant? You know what I mean? Because
it's funny. I just had this conversation with somebody somewhat recently, and they were kind of saying how these situations will keep arising until you learn that lesson.
Yeah, I know full well about that.
So I think that kind of correlates with what you were saying, just because. For many, 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 many years, I was kind of told that there's been, I guess I don't know if act is the correct word, but I act as if there was some trauma in my life, and I was like, no, I can't really, no, but at some point, it was like, okay, yeah, there was, but then you have to sit down and try and figure out what it was and what you're feeling and connect them,
Here's the question, though. Have you acknowledged all that trauma?
No.
Okay. All right. That's honest.
Yeah.
I was wondering because it's...
Well, because some of it, again, you could swear you're right, kind of thing. It's like, I didn't see it as trauma. And I'm like, it doesn't really bother me. But then, again, year or two down the road, and it's like something comes up, and I'm like, I want to punch a hole in the wall. And I'm like, okay, so obviously something, I need to go back to the chapter 2 here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I'm dealing with a whole lot of that recently, and it's still going on. And, we're going to actually get to it in a future episode about forgiveness and stuff, which should be an interesting interesting conversation between the two of us, which is why I kind of wanted to save it for later. And it's pretty eye opening to admit that hurt is there. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
right.
But it's painful.
It is. But like you said, sometimes you genuinely...
It sucks to be honest.
It sucks to be honest. Yeah, it does. Yep, and it hurts to be real.
That's true. You're right.
But sometimes, like you said, you truly may not know. You may not realize. You know what I mean?
Well, and again, I think it kind of comes back to how we talk about initial emotions versus the secondary stuff that comes as you're walking down into the basement. You know what I mean? Whether it's that first thing of just whether you're mad because somebody cut you off in traffic, or is it really that you're resentful, or you know what I mean? There's all those secondary and,
for sure,
and third levels. And I mean, you're talking about the, Dante's Inferno here of pain. It's just kind of like every level is just...
And I think, I think a lot of it's tied to ego.
Oh, I can see that. And protection, because your ego is supposed to protect you. That's what they say. That's what a lot of people say, is that the ego is a protective covering for you.
That's good. I've never heard that, but I like it.
I believe that.
Yeah, sure.
But I also believe that just like anything can be good in moderation, too much of the ego is way bad, as we know.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
I think as you start to peel, and the ego doesn't want you to peel it away. It doesn't want you to be vulnerable. The ego doesn't want you to admit that you're hurt. The ego doesn't want you to admit that you're wounded. The ego doesn't want you to admit that you feel way shorter than everybody else, because it just, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's
right. Yep. So you got to start thinking differently, thinking new thoughts.
Start thinking when you're a skyscraper.
Well, when you think of, or even if you don't think of it, if you're in a situation and something, feelings of that trauma or hurt, reoccur, it brings you back to that old stage. You remember when you were up on stage, it brings you back to that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
You find yourself back on stage and you're like, okay, so now I'm digressing. And now that I'm thinking that, I'm actually going back and I'm thinking the same thoughts that I did, 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was, when I was up on stage.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that stage could have been when you were 4 years old.
Yeah,
and you got left in the supermarket or something. And that didn't happen to me, but
right. No,
it only
you
takes
feel the
something,
same emotions that you felt when you were in those circumstances.
And we actually covered this recently with our guest Kelly Conrad about how complex post-traumatic stress disorder is just that. It's that repetitive at one after the other where there's little or no escape from.
Yep.
And where you literally, like with post-traumatic stress disorder, you relive these feelings and you're there a lot of times with PTSD in that situation that, whether it's, in a combat situation or just in a life situation. Because as we all know, post-traumatic stress disorder, yes, is very, very highly prevalent in all those occupations, but it's also prevalent in the real world as far as people having trauma.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're finding out
Accidents.
more
and
and
a
more.
lot of that stuff, anything can bring on post-traumatic stress disorder. It's just, and if you're wired that way, if you're wired for negativity,
Sure.
then it's like a detonation that just sets off an explosion.
Right. Or again, if you, maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you have not healed from something that happened in the past or have not acknowledged it, and something happens that could trigger that, you know what I mean? That also is going to bring back that same feeling, that same emotion,
Oh, absolutely.
the same emotional response, I guess you could even say.
And I think oftentimes it's more painful.
Reliving it?
Reliving it again because again, there's other levels to that, because as a grown-up, or what we deem grown-up, you're supposed to understand that this is just the feeling,
Right.
but not when you're thrust in the middle of it. It's not, man.
Right. And I think, you know what, there's definitely some truth to that, because I think if you were actually in the situation, it's almost like you have a reason to feel that way. Like, yeah, I'm feeling this way because, there's a saber tooth coming at me. But, if, 10 years down the road, I'm in a supermarket, there's no saber tooth coming at me, but I'm having these same feelings. You know what I mean?
Sure. Or maybe there's a truck coming at you.
Or maybe there's a truck coming at you,
That can happen too.
Yeah. Sure as hell can.
And it's taken me a little bit of time to and I have my own lived experience with that, man. Like, anytime a white pickup truck gets next to me, I tense up. I really do. And I don't and pickup trucks in general. I just have an aversion to them. Just because, when you have one drive through your car, you kind of tend to...
That will do it.
That'll do it, you know what I mean?
That will do it,
But it's, it is what it is.
So do you think in order to kind of move forward from your shadow days, do you think you have to, it's important to heal first?
Well, first you have to, I don't think you can heal unless you know what needs healing.
Right.
So, I suppose if you're going to put it in like a step-by-step thing, you got to acknowledge where the pain comes from.
Sure.
Or you have to figure out that there's pain, because you can't heal something that you don't know is hurt.
Yeah. Or where you're hurting.
Or where you're hurting. I mean, it's easy, if you fall down and break a bone, you know what you got to heal.
Right.
But when it comes to the somatic part of things, you don't know necessarily what is going to heal, and we know that. We've brought up the body keeps the score, and I had a acupuncture appointment today, actually the day we're recording this, and we were kind of talking about how that maybe some of my neck and back pain isn't just from my discs being fucked up. It's because it's psychosomatic, and I believe that, because there's no doubt that
I never even
you're an
looked at it
energy
that way,
body. It's not, you know what I mean? You're an energy body, and there's meridians in your body that get blocked, that get out of whack.
Have you ever tried going to Reiki or anything?
I have not, but I am going to reach out to our friend there and talk to him about some Reiki.
Okay.
My God, his name
It's
is...
all right. You don't have to say his name. I just didn't know.
Well, I was going to give him a shout out, but then it escaped me. The guy who was in our group that came before our last group that did the...
Rob?
Yeah, Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Rob.
That's true.
Big Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Motorcycle
I always forget.
Rob.
I know. I always forget.
Rob. Yeah. Yeah, Tai Chi Rob. Man.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a Reiki guy.
You're right,
So I was
he
actually
is.
thinking about...
I always forget he's a Reiki guy.
I was thinking about reaching out to him and...
Good idea.
And having... And I also know some other Reiki people too. But I'm afraid to go to somebody that knows me too well, because I've never done Reiki. I know it's an energy
thing. I've tried
thing.
it a few times, and I don't know.
No,
I've been told it doesn't work for me because I don't believe in it. So
Well, if you don't believe in something, it's probably not going to work.
I mean,
for
the
you.
first time, sure, I didn't believe in it, but the second and third, I'm like, I'm open to it, but it's just like, what? One time I fell asleep. I'm like, oh, it didn't work because you fell asleep. All right, well, it's like, I don't know. It's almost, I don't know.
And it could also be who's doing it.
Could be.
It could. You know what I mean? It could be the fact that they don't know how to work with you. But that same thing happened to me with floating. Like, we've talked about the sensory deprivation tank, man, and I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
But, like, the second or third time, I was kind of like, it's cool to feel like you're weightless, but I don't really feel any different getting out. Like, I was hoping...
I think for me, it's like, it's almost like, I mean, for me, and I'm not putting anybody down, I'm just saying for me, it's more useful to go get a massage. Like, I can relax, and then at the same time, I'm getting, like, my muscles rubbed, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's that whole, like, relaxing experience. It's like, I don't know if it's the act, if you can say act of Reiki itself, but it's just laying there and having that quiet meditation time almost, So instead of, emptying my bank account for a couple of sessions, I could sit home and kind of, throw on some binaural beats or some meditation, a guided meditation or something on YouTube and do it myself for 20 minutes.
Have you done any shadow work with have you found like anything to do some shadow work with?
No.
There's some good stuff out there shadow wise that you should look into.
Yeah.
But our shadow is there for a reason, man. And I often, like, we covered this with the anxiety MD, man, Dr. Russ, and we talked about the wounded child. And I think I don't necessarily think your shadow is bad. I don't think your shadow is meant to be bad.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I think it's all in how you perceive it.
It's a mindset, yeah.
It's a mindset. So if you look at your shadow as a friend,
yeah, I guess for me it's kind of indifferent. I kind of look at it as a motivator at times, It's like maybe sometimes it causes me more anxiety, but it's like at the same time, like I'll use it to be like, all right, like this is another thing that we need to concentrate on, or this general area we should focus on, because obviously it's like it's that if you're in a situation and you're feeling triggered, it's the same thing. That trigger's there as like a gauge. Like if you're triggered for some reason, there's something within you that is. It's like, it's that alert button going, well, okay, so why are you triggered? Like, you should look into this right here.
Well, shadow work is trauma work. It's based on the Jungian theory of the shadow. So I get where trauma triggers shadow. But it's also something to be said, if you're going to reframe it, that you want to make friends with the bad parts, right? Don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I that's just my opinion. I think that you kind of need to like make friends with it all, because if maybe maybe the gremlins aren't inherently bad, they're acting like little bastards, but I don't think they're meant to be negative, and you could look at it that way and be like, all right, well, there's this little guy that's kind of giving me trouble, but like maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe he means well, he just doesn't know how to act.
He's trying to teach you something.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
See, like mine, like with Billy, you know what I mean? He was only, if your wounded child only grew up to a certain age,
right.
It can't think past that age. You know what I mean? So you can't expect it to think past that age.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really focus on that. I didn't see it that way. So, but when you say it like that, it makes more sense for sure.
Yeah, I think your shadow can be a friend, but you have to learn how to make friends with it.
Right.
And again, all relationships take work, regardless.
Time, sure.
Time, trust.
Talk to it. I think, I think you don't want to. Again, balance. I think you don't want to, let's say if you want to befriend them and talk through things, but don't get to the point where you're digressing and getting stuck in those, those parts and those pieces.
Right. But it's sometimes easy to get caught in those ants, though.
Oh,
because
yeah.
when those ants march,
Right.
it can be, and a lot of those ants, they're not your basic worker black ants. They're fire ants, man. They're ready.
They're fire ants for sure. I think they're they come equipped too. They're carrying.
Yeah, and the shadow is the dark side of our personality. Because it really consists of, primitive, negative human emotions and our impulses like rage and envy and greed and selfishness and desire and the striving for power. But I don't necessarily know if all of those things are bad. I don't think the desire is bad necessarily.
Right,
Inherently, I don't think it's bad.
Right.
It depends on how you project that desire or what you choose to do with that desire.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. The intent. I think intent matters. You know what I mean? Intent matters. It's just how it works.
Yeah, intent matters. I think there's a point where intent stops mattering if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Then there's something else at play.
Sure.
And there could be a negative, and that negative could be empowering to the person too, because I think that there's some of that also that you almost get off on it in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, some people might.
Maybe
I don't know
not.
if that's a positive thing, but
well, and maybe not all. Maybe not knowingly.
right. I see. What you're saying.
Maybe it's
More
just
like unconscious.
Yeah, it's subconscious where you kind of do get off on it.
Okay. I could see that happening too. I guess if you're kind of going back and trying to heal, and because you want to move forward. So let's say you're looking to move forward, progress, and you kind of look back, and you could get stuck, I guess, while you're in that process.
Right, and the reason why you get stuck, especially when it comes to shadow stuff, is that the unexamined or disowned parts of us, which are our shadow, don't go anywhere. They're still there.
Right.
They're still there. So unless you open up the closet and say, "Hey, come on out, boys and girls, let's play," you're not.
Yeah, and even that, I don't mean that's like a skill. I don't think you can really. I mean, that's kind of like, it's similar to like talking to your unconscious thoughts again, because these things are patterns and loops.
Absolutely, and especially as children, like, we want love. We naturally, kids, we all see this. We see this so much. Kids don't care about anything except for playing and having fun, and doesn't seem to matter who comes into the group. None of that. And then all of a sudden, things change when they learn things or when they experience things, and it's in those parts of that bad experience that we hold on to so much that creates this shadow thing, in a way.
But
or at least I think it does. I don't know.
I think those experiences though are kind of needed at the same time though.
Need for what?
Like just for growth and learning. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you know if something is going to have a negative effect on you if you don't kind of, I think by stumbling over, by falling and picking yourself back up, you learn things, you grow, and you gain strength and resiliency. And whereas if you don't, if these things don't happen to you, you may not know how to respond or react.
Well, sure, you may not have the language, you may not understand. Now, Carl Jung says that the repression of our unwanted parts create our personal shadow.
Yep.
And he has a quote that there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. Which our imperfections lie in our shadow because that's where they reside. And if you're not willing to look at your imperfections and friend them and take them in, and
Do you think there's some yin and yang to that?
well, there's yin and yang to everything.
Right, but I didn't know if it was intention, I guess. If it was intended to be that way.
I don't want to say for sure. Are you asking my opinion?
Yeah, I'm just asking. Yeah, I'm just asking.
I don't know because I haven't really done enough learning about the shadow. Like, I mean, because the problem is you fall down these rabbit holes. You could spend years just stuck on one thing, which is great, but it's you need many little things. You need many little things to make one big thing. So it's easy to pull a little bit from here and there.
Yeah.
I think that it's a benefit to know the dark parts of your personality. For sure. And I mean, obviously, I know I have abandonment issues. For sure. No doubt about it. And I think most of us do. But we also don't, if we don't acknowledge that we've been abandoned or that we've abandoned ourselves. I've abandoned myself. Like, you can't go through life and get to a certain point in life and not have made concessions, not have made choices. Like, you can't get to almost 50 years old and not have had a bunch of shit happen. It's impossible unless you live. I mean, we take the story of the Buddha. I mean, even the Buddha, who was a prince, who had an entire little kingdom built around him. Parents tried to keep him from all the negativity outside.
Right.
And he couldn't figure out why all this stuff was going on, and he had to sit there under the Bodhi tree for however long it was just to figure this shit out, man. So it's.
I was just looking for a Carl Jung quote, and I didn't find it, but I did find something that I kind of feel goes with this discussion. It was this is from Sigmund Freud. It's unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to, and when they say ugly, it doesn't have to be, it can just be, I mean, ugly can be, ugly is a degree of ugly, like depending on who you are or what you are. But, it's funny because we think to like monster movies and like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's your perfect shadow relationship. When you look at it.
Yeah, I never looked at it that way.
Or like the American Werewolf in London. The werewolf, man. The werewolf only came out at certain times. So it's like, we can't say that about the Count because he was always a vampire. So. But, when you look at Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, there's, that's a perfect example of yin and yang. Right. And I think that there's yin and yang in it because whichever is the yin and yang, I don't necessarily, I don't want to go with it at the classic black white side because we all have varying degrees of both of those things in us.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I mean, either way, I think, like you said, there's yin and yang in everything, in all aspects.
And there's a lot of projection involved in, like, when you project something onto someone else, it's because it's buried in you. Or it's a need that you're not fulfilling, or you feel. Because I've been kind of going through this myself. Just feeling that I've as it is, I've always had a feeling like nobody ever heard me. Like and I'm always screaming louder. Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously. And then I noticed that certain personalities will project onto me what I perceive as being projected onto me. in a way is because it's something that I don't have and that I'm longing for or wish was me, or you know what I mean? Where
It's like we don't see things as they are; we see things as we are.
Yeah, that's I like that. That's a good way to say it, because we don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we see through our shit-colored glasses a lot of times, or our broken glasses, or our sparkly blue glasses.
Yeah, there we go. Or fluffy cotton candy glasses.
Yeah, cotton candy glasses. I wish I had cotton candy glasses.
You'd probably eat them.
I would probably eat them. I do have a sugar problem. See, I can own the bad parts of my stuff. There's nothing wrong with it.
No,
don't judge me.
Hey, that's how you move forward, Will. Right?
That's right, man.
One of the steps, I think, is recognizing it and figuring out what needs to be healed and what needs to be put back together.
Yeah, putting back together shit, though, man, is hard. It was interesting when Kelly Conrad was on our podcast recently. She said that the universe dumped out the entire trash bin of her life.
Yeah.
And I just love that. It just stuck with me. And it was like one of the best lines out of all the...
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It was good. And she was just like... she was forced to examine and look at every piece of trash and pick it up. And it was like, wow. Trash is a metaphor for life, man.
And I think you nailed it in just that saying that. I think, she was forced. That's I think there's a difference, and there's a balance in either desperation, or some people can choose. Let's say that you want to move forward, and some people choose a goal. Well, sometimes being forced is a better motivator than having a goal.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's the most positive way, but it's just like, look, if you're forced to examine this, then chances are you're going to have a better shot of sifting through all the trash.
Well, it's funny that you say forced, because I recently was...
No, you said forced.
I said forced?
Who's on forced?
May the force be with you. And also with you. It's funny, though, that you mentioned forced, because I recently was thinking about some stuff, because I've contemplated going back to school. And then I've contemplated the idea of what going back to school really entails, which isn't about education. It's about the shitloads of money that you need to spend to get a piece of paper that, by the time...
may not really make a difference.
May or may not really make a goddamn bit of difference. However, I was thinking back to when I was in high school, and there's part of me that wishes that my family forced me to do 2 years of college.
Really?
Yeah.
See, but then at the time, though, maybe if they did force you, it wouldn't have worked. It's hard to say.
Well, I think it still would have worked, because I still would have had the choice as to where I went. I just wish that I could have made
that first step to go, and then...
Right, and the problem is that when you're 18 or 19, you think everything is now. And I was so afraid that if I wasted any more time doing what I'm doing other things, then I wouldn't have been able to do the things I did. But yet, the things that I really wanted to do were so short-lived,
right,
that you wake up 30 years later and...
But you know what? Some of those experiences shaped and molded us, so it's,
Well, they all shape and mold you. But I think it would have been slightly different. And again, as we know, make one change and everything changes.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for what I have, because I am, and I'm grateful for the steps that I've walked and stuff. But and truthfully, at this point in my life, I wouldn't change it anymore. I don't want to live in the past. It's just unfortunate that my past keeps coming back to to get up in my face and say, "Fuck you! You better listen. You better do some work now." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's kind of like the school bully. You know, and we know what happens.
Rules.
So when you do shadow work, there's some good stuff that can come out of shadow work, man. You can improve your relationships.
Oh, sure.
You can have clearer perception. You actually can have enhanced energy and physical health, which, I'd be more than happy with.
They say that
health.
even you can be more creative and efficient at what you do, and you can all stay. Some say you can like people live longer.
Well, it says greater creativity and
Yeah.
psychological integration and maturity. And shit, I ain't mature.
You know, it's funny because I just saw like a meme. I don't think I saved it, but I'm gonna look anyways because I just saw a meme and it said, "Oh, I did." Yeah, I don't know who said it, but it was on Don Miguel Ruiz. It was on his Instagram, and it said, "Maturing is realizing how many things don't require your comment."
Wow.
I know, I like that.
Well, you might want to read that one again, just so you know.
Asshole.
I love it.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen,
You walked right into that door, dude. You opened that door.
edit this out. Will you?
You opened that door and slid down those stairs.
So, if you enjoyed today's episode, you can always, if you're listening to it on Apple, you can always hit subscribe so you won't miss any more episodes.
And then you can scribe us a review.
Sure thing.
Because that makes the show a lot easier to find for people. And then what else can they do with it, Timmy?
Well, it depends. You can give us some stars to rate it, or if you listen on Spotify or Google, just share it. Let people know. That's, I think, is the biggest thing, is just kind of sharing it. If you're on social media, you can post it to your page or just share it to a friend. Say, hey, these guys talk about this, and you might be able to relate, and they might give you some tips and pointers that could help.
Yeah, and we do appreciate all the reviews, man. And I want to give a huge shout out, virtual hug, high five to my bald friend, Sean Wellington. Sean was a guest. Tim and I were both on his podcast at separate times.
Correct.
Suicide Noted, but Sean left us an awesome review. And the headline of the review says, "These guys get it. Important work done by these guys. Really enjoy this podcast. I learn a lot and am reminded that I am not alone." And you know what? That's what we aim to do, man. We aim to make the world a little bit smaller and make it feel like you're hanging out in the local coffee shop.
Right, a little community, man, And Sean does his own. Sean does the same kind of, awesome work. He's got Suicide Noted.
And he's got Grit, the storytelling podcast, man. He's a great guy, and he does incredible work himself. And he's a well-traveled, smart, super dude who really
Who's bald.
does. Yeah, he's bald. He's bald like me. Bald like Will. Bald like the rest of us.
So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and for any support, any likes on social media.
Absolutely. You can find us at Above Ground Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. You can find us on Twitter at Above Ground Pod. And you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcast.
What if somebody wants to email us, Will?
Email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to fill out the subject line so we know what you're emailing us about, because I've done that where I forget to fill out the subject line. Although it does really pop up a reminder that says, "Do you really want to send it this way?" So
on that note, we hope that you can start to leave your shadow days behind.
That's right. That's right. Because we're all good people with good hearts.
Yeah.
Some of us had a rough time, had a rough start.
That's true.
Thanks, John Mayer. Until next time, be well.
Be safe.
Be above.